This is Top Accolade Global News Updates. I am Soibifa Jackrich. Former President Donald Trump is disqualified from serving as U.S. President and cannot appear on the primary ballots in Colorado because of his role in the January 6, 2021 attack on the U.S. Capitol by his supporters. The state's top court ruled Tuesday the historic 4-3 ruling by the Colorado Supreme Court, likely to be taken up by the U.S. Supreme Court, makes Trump the first president candidate deemed ineligible for the White House under a rarely used constitutional provision that bars officials who have engaged in insurrection or rebellion from holding office. The ruling applies only to Colorado's March 5th Republican primary, but it could affect Trump's status in the state for the November 5th general election. Non-partisan U.S. election forecasters view Colorado as safely Democratic, meaning that President Joe Biden will likely carry the state regardless of Trump's fate there. Trump vowed to appeal the ruling to the U.S. Supreme Court, and the Colorado court said it will delay the effect of its decision until at least January 4th, 2024. To allow for an appeal, the ruling applies only to Colorado's March 5th Republican primary, but it could affect Trump's status in the state for the November 5th general election. Non-partisan U.S. election forecasters view Colorado as safely Democratic, meaning that President Joe Biden will likely carry the state regardless. The lawsuit is viewed as a test case for a wider effort to disqualify Trump from state ballots under Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, which was enacted after the U.S. Civil War to keep supporters of the Confederacy from serving in the government. The Colorado court concluded that the U.S. Constitution bars Trump, the frontrunner for the Republican nomination in 2024, from appearing on the ballot because of his role instigating violence at the Capitol. As lawmakers met to certify the result of the 2020 election, the court's majority acknowledged the decision was uncharted territory. Trump's campaign called the court decision undemocratic. The decision reverses a ruling by a lower court judge who found Trump engaged in insurrection by inciting his supporters to violence, but concluded that as president, Trump was not an officer of the United States who could be disqualified under the amendments. The European Union reached agreement early on Wednesday on new rules designed to share out the cost and work of hosting migrants more evenly and to limit the numbers of people coming in. Representatives of the European Parliament and of EU governments reached an accord after all-night talks of EU laws collectively called the New Pact on Migration and Asylum that should take effect next year. The laws covered screening irregular migrants when they arrive in the European Union, procedures for handling asylum applications, rules on determining which EU country is responsible for handling applications, and ways to handle crisis. Migrant arrivals in the European Union are way down from the 2015 peak of more than 1 million, but have steadily crept up from a 2020 low to 255,000 in the year to November, with more than half crossing the Mediterranean from Africa to Italy or Malta. Previous efforts to share out the responsibility of hosting migrants have founded because Eastern EU members in particular were unwilling to take in people who had arrived in Greece, Italy and other countries. Under the new system, countries not at the border will have a choice between accepting refugees or paying into an EU fund. The screening system envisaged will seek to distinguish between those in need of international protection and others who are not. People whose applications have a low chance of success, such as those from India, Tunisia or Turkey, can be prevented from entering the EU and detained at the border, as can people seen as representing a threat to security. Toyota Motors that has 2 units will halt shipment of all of its vehicles, Japan's biggest automaker said on Wednesday, after an investigation into a safety scandal found issues at 64 models, including almost 2 dozen sold under Toyota's brand. An independent panel has been investigating Daihatsu after it said in April it had rigged side collision safety tests carried out for 88,000 small cars, most of those sold at Toyotas. But the latest latest revelations suggest the scope of the scandal is far greater than previously thought and could potentially tarnish the automaker's reputation for quality and safety. Daihatsu is Toyota's small car unit and produces a number of the so-called key smaller cars and trucks that are popular in Japan. The latest issues also impacted some Mazda and Subaru models sold in the domestic market and Toyota and Daihatsu models overseas. The panel found Daihatsu was found to have cheated on safety tests of almost all models it currently has in production, and as well as some cars it made in the past. The Asahi newspaper previously reported the issue emerged after Daihatsu said in April it had discovered the wrongly conducted tests after a whistleblower report. It has reported the issue of regulatory agencies and halted shipments of affected models the following months. It said it has stopped sales of the Toyota Race hybrid electric vehicle and its own Rocky model after also finding problems with testing for those models. Daihatsu produced 1.1 million vehicles over the first 10 months of the year, nearly 40% of those at overseas sites, according to Toyota's data. It sold some 660,000 vehicles worldwide over that period and accounted for 7% of Toyota's sales. Toyota said on Wednesday affected models included those for the Southeast Asian market of Thailand, Indonesia, Malaysia, Cambodia, and Vietnam, and Central and South America countries of Mexico, Ecuador, Peru, Chile, Bolivia, and Uruguay. Daihatsu is the latest safety issues to impact the Toyota Group over the years. Toshiba was delisted on Wednesday after 74 years on the Tokyo Exchange, following a decade of upheaval and scandal that brought down on one of Japan's biggest brands and upshredded in a buyout and an uncertain future. The conglomerate is being taken private by a group of investors led by private equity from Japan Industry Partners (JIP) that also includes financial services from Oryx, utility Chubu Electric Power, and chipmaker ROM. The 14 billion takeover puts Toshiba in domestic hands after protracted battles with overseas activity investors that paralyzed the maker of batteries, chips, and nuclear and defense equipment. Toshiba will now take a major step towards a new future with a new shareholder, the company said in a statement, adding that it would appreciate continuous understanding and support from its stakeholders. Toshiba shares ended Tuesday, their last trading day, at 4,590 yen, down 0.1% from the previous day. Although it is not clear what shape Toshiba will ultimately take under the new owners, Chief Executive Taro Shinada, who is staying in his role following the buyout, is expected to focus on high-margin digital services. JIP support for Chimanda has derailed its earlier plan to team up with a state-backed fund. Some industry insiders say splitting up Toshiba may be a better option. First half of next year will offer favorable conditions for Italian government bonds after a stellar 2023, analysts say. But problems may surface from June onwards, connected with politics and future moves by European Central Bank. The sustainability of Italy's 2.4 trillion euro, that is $2.6 trillion, public debt on one of the biggest government bond markets in the world, has long been seen as a potential weak link for the stability of the 20-nation currency bloc. Those worries has been exacerbated by a string of ECB rate hikes since last year to fight inflation that have taken Eurozone interest rates to record highs. But Italian bonds have drawn strong demand through 2023 thanks to appealing returns and are ending the year on a high note after Rome confounded expectations by weathering a series of potentially dangerous reviews by credit ratings agencies. The closely watched gap between the yields on Italian 10-year BTBs and less risky German bonds fell below 165 basic points, that is 1.65% points, on Tuesday, the lowest level since late August. Nothing less, it remained considerably higher than the spread versus Germany of any other Eurozone country. A side market remained wary of Italy's stubbornly high debts, equal to about 140% of national output. He predicted a trouble-free year for Italian bonds, bolstered by the stability of Giorgia Meloni's 14-month-old told government and said the BTP bond spread could decline to 120 to 130 basic points by the end of the year. The narrowing of Italian spreads over the last few months confounded the expectations of analysts who had forecast the government's deficit hiking 2024 budgets presented in October could trigger negative responses from the rating agencies instead. S&P Global, DBRS and Fitch all left Italy's position unchanged. Moody's, which rates Rome just one notch above junk, upgraded its outlook to stable from negative. That's the size of top accolade global news updates. You can follow us on our social media platforms as displayed on your screen. Happy Wednesday.